Hello class, this is your teacher Mr. Lucero and we're going to start working with a new class. For today we have page 28. 28, okay, give me a second. Here. Page 29, I'm sorry. Page 29. And we're going to continue with the activity listening. In this listening activity says 16th century houses. Okay, so the idea is to talk about this type of houses. It looks like a picture, but well, let's see. Alex and Emily are talking about houses for rich and poor people in the 16th century. Before you listen, complete a chart with the words in the box: beds, carpets, chairs, clocks, or toilets. The idea here is to put there were or there weren't. For example, for rich people, there were beds? Yes or no? Maybe 10 beds? There were 10 beds? Yeah, there were beds. Perfect. Could be a possibility. For poor people, there were beds. Poor people in the 16th century, remember, it's not today, in the 16th century. Yes or no? Maybe yes, maybe no. Okay, no ideas. Perfect. What about carpets? Carpets. For rich people, there were carpets. For poor houses, no idea. There weren't. Chair. For rich people, there were chairs. Okay. For poor houses, there were. Okay. Clocks. When you see the hour, not the time. For rich people, there were. For poor houses, there weren't. The opposite. Toilets. In the 16th century. For rich people, there were or weren't? No idea. There weren't. Okay, toilets. Okay, pay attention. In this activity, we're going to listen and write true or false. Okay, true or false to the following activities. So pay attention.
Unit 2, Track 22, Activity 2.
Yuck! No toilets?
What are you doing, Alex?
Oh, hi Emily. I'm reading about houses in 16th century. There were houses for the rich and houses for the poor, but there weren't any toilets. Can you imagine?
Really? Weren't there any toilets? Were the houses for the rich and the poor similar?
Well, no. A poor family's house was usually one small room.
So, where were the bedrooms?
There weren't any bedrooms.
So there weren't any beds?
There were some beds, but they weren't very comfortable.
And in a rich family's house?
There were bedrooms with comfortable beds.
What about other furniture like chairs and tables?
Chairs were very expensive.
So there were chairs in rich people's homes?
Yes, there were.
What about decoration? Were there posters or pictures on the wall? Or carpets on the floor?
Well, carpets were also very expensive, so rich families often put their carpets on the wall.
Are you serious? Were there carpets on the wall?
Yes, and obviously, there weren't any carpets at all in poor people's homes.
No. What about clocks?
Clocks? Clocks, let's see. It says here, in the 16th century, the rich had clocks in their homes.
And I imagine there weren't any clocks in poor families' homes. So, were poor children late for school?
There weren't any schools for poor children, Emily.
Oh.
Okay, boys. Okay, girls. The idea was to listen and try to complete true or false. For example, letter A. There were two rooms in a poor family's house. True or false? According to the listening. Letter B. The beds were comfortable in all houses. Letter C. Chairs were very expensive. D. There were carpets on the floor of rich people's house. E. Poor people were often late for school. So, what do you have to do? If you couldn't listen carefully, you can play the audio once again, you can repeat the audio and write true or false to those sentences. I can help you. Only one sentence is true, the others are false. But what is that true sentence? Let's continue. Cultural fact. In the 16th century, glass was very expensive. If there were a lot of glass windows in a house, the family was very rich. Okay? Well, this is the extra information about 16th century houses. Okay? Now let's continue. Speaking time. Okay, this is a activity, a speaking activity on page 30. Okay, page 30. Now, my first question. The title says at the library. What can you see in the picture? Describe the picture. Two boys. Okay, what are they? At the library, of course, yes. And they are on the computer. Okay, let's see. Letter, sorry. First activity. Alex and Josh are doing a school search project about Aboriginal houses in the past. Listen and complete the dialogue. Okay, so this is your activity. Listen and complete the dialogue. For example, they say here in Australia, Aborigines were, letter A, need to be completed, a long time ago. Yeah, they, and letter B, you need to listen to the audio. Kind of campers, some of their, and letter C, were usually learning branches against each other like a dam. They were called gunges. So you have letter D, E, F, G, H, I, J. So you have a lot of information to look for in the audio. Okay? So this is the first activity. Listen to the audio and complete the dialogue. So please pay attention.
Unit 2, Track 23. Speaking.
They say here that Australian Aborigines were nomadic people a long time ago.
Yeah, they were kind of campers. Some of their shelters were usually leaning branches against each other like a dome. They were called gunyas.
The info here is that this was common in the arid interior.
And in wet seasons, were shelters different?
Yes, they were. In wet seasons, caves in sandstone were the most common Aboriginal housing.
Look at this. Fire was always present around gunyas as it was used to drive away snakes and mosquitoes and other insects, as well as for cooking and heating.
To sum up, the climate, the natural environment, and the family size were all factors to consider when building a house.
They weren't really city people.
Okay, ladies. Okay, boys. So the idea here is to complete. I just play once the audio, so you can repeat this part. There is no problem, and I can continue. They say here that Australian Aborigines were, what is the possible answer? Yes, nomadic people, a long time ago. Yeah, they, Remember, we used the verb to be in the past. They were kind of campers. Some of them were usually learning branches. Shelter. Some of their shelter were usually learning branches against each other like a dome. They were called gunges. The info here is that this was common in the arid interior. And in wet season, were shelters different? Yeah, they were. In wet seasons, exactly, caves in sandstone were the most common aboriginal housing. Look at this. Was always present around the Ganges. Exactly, fire. No, look at this. Fire was always present around Ganges, as it was just to drive, away snakes and mosquitoes and other insects, as well as for cooking or heating. To sum up, the climate, the natural environment, and the family size were all factors to consider when building a house. They, negative, they weren't really city people. Okay, boys. Okay, girls, I help you with this information. So, if you wanna be ready for the class, you can watch the video. If not, well, you can wait for my class. Now, the idea here, as the first activity says, listen and complete the dialogue. When you finish the dialogue, what are you going to do? You are going to look for functional languages. Talking about a school research speaker. They say here that they were cold. This was common in warehouses different, warehouses big, warehouses small, warehouses made of. No? So the idea here is to look for information about a school research. No? Like when you look for an activity, not for your history teacher or science teacher. They say here that I don't know the what can I say? The receipt for cooking a cake is like some flour, some eggs, some milk, no, some sugar, and they were called, for example, today are cake. They were called in Spanish pasteles. Okay, that's the idea. This was common in, no. And the speaker number two, when you answer, look at this. Fire was always. It was or wasn't just. They were or weren't really, no. So those functional language, those phrases are here in the conversation. Yeah, they say here that Australian Aborigines, no, they say here they were called. No, for example, I can say they say here that the old Peruvian people were in Cusco, no, and they were called the Incas. This was common in all Peru. Were houses different? Yeah, no, different because well, it was made of rocks. For example, no, they were big or were small. That's the idea. Well, let's continue with the speaking task. In the speaking task, excuse me, I was forgetting something. Before continuing, we need to practice this. So you're going to take a few minutes practicing, and after that, you're going to tell the class the conversation. Okay, this dialogue. When you finish, we continue with the speaking task. Write a dialogue between you and friend about a school research project. So, think about one of these subjects: cities in your country, home type in your city or country, farmhouses in your city or your country. So, you need to take one of those topics and create a new dialogue. So the idea is to use this as a model. Remember I was talking about Incas? Exactly. Only change a little, not a lot, a little. Okay? So after that, prepare sentences using the questions, no? Here are some questions. Work in pairs with write a dialogue, and at least you're going to take turns. Okay? You're going to take turns and tell the dialogue to your teacher. How what? Because time is very, very terrible with us. So you're going to record a video in which you are telling this conversation. Okay? Remember that the topic was at the library. So imagine you're at the library. On page 31 here, you are going to do a culture activity. Scotland's Black Houses. This reading activity is going to be your homework. Okay, your homework. So you are going to read this part, no, this article about Scotland's Black Houses, and then you are going to write true or false to those sentences. Answer number 2. What were country the houses like in your country 200 years ago? No. And number 3, share your feelings with the class and compare them to your classmates. Answer, write down any new information. And that's it. Okay, and that's it. This is going to be our class for today. So pay attention. Thank you so much. See you in class.